call the budget meeting to order. Like that. Do we have any citizens communication?
No, ma'am.
All right, no citizens communication. Are we ready to approve the meetings on April 14th? Any changes or corrections? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Ready to approve the minutes for April 15th.
Move to approve. Second.
Any changes or corrections? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. We have some transfers. Where am I? Do we have transfers?
No transfers this evening.
Oh, okay. I'm looking good. I think we're gonna do it like we did last time, because Phoebe was so fast. Phoebe pretty much goes over and tells us any changes. So.
The first budget in front of you this evening is for our circuit court clerk. This is Department 53100. And the total amount, budgeted amount of $2,231,909.
Move to approve.
Does anybody, well, I'm gonna let you go and talk about it first.
The total increase of this budget is $70,011. This is completely 100% salaries, so there is no adjustment in operations.
Any questions on this budget? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Our next budget this evening is for the General Sessions Court, Department 53300. And the total amount of $1,345,586.
Move to approve.
Second.
There were only two small increases in this budget other than the salaries. So salaries constitute the majority of this increase. There was a small increase on page 4. You will see for periodicals, an increase of $2,000. This is just increase in cost due to shipping and handling and just in general. And the other item was the addition of $2,500 on page 5 for some office equipment. This, as you can see, is for commercial shredder, some money counter. This is for our probation officer or office. They take in a great deal of money, as you can imagine. Currently having to hand count that. This will help take care of that, as well as just a few conveniences that will help them go a little more paperless. So this is just to benefit their department. So total increase of $55,995. Again, $4,000 of that for operations. The remaining is for salary increases.
Does anyone have any questions?
Just, I guess, a quick question on the revised budget. It was $33.3 million. Is that correct?
Where are we at?
On last page.
So the last page, it was actually only an increase of $55,995. I think what you may be looking at is the current year revised budget. That includes the grants.
Okay.
So we do not include that in original budget because we come back to you once those grants are approved, and we do those by separate resolutions. So that changed. The reason why there's such a significant change are the grant funds.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Baker, do you have a
I was
question?
just gonna point out that the equipment also included counterfeit detection, reducing the time spent on the physical count on bills that, for the counterfeit detection piece. I thought that was interesting.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
The next budget this evening is for our Chancery Court. This is Department 53400. Total budget of $888,956.
Move to approve.
Second.
The total increase is $37,019. Only only $1,100 is an increase in operations. Everything else gets completely salaries. And everything else was able to absorb within the operations, moving money between line items. So the only thing we could not absorb was $1,100 outside of salary increase.
And this $1,100, I noticed there was some contract costs and dues and postal, right?
Yes, it is. It's on that first page. Dues and memberships for 100, and maintenance and repair for some office equipment. That contract and those lease for copiers is the increase of $1,000.
Any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Next budget is for juvenile court, Department 53500. And the total proposed budget is $834,482.
Second.
The total increase from the original budget is $33,379. This is 100% of the salary increase, no operational change.
Any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Department 53700 for judicial commissioners. Total budget proposed of $601,862.
Motion approved.
Second.
There was increased total salaries of $55,706. The only other two increases, there was a small increase for communications on that very first page and $500. And there was an increase of $300 in their operating lease. Again, you will see that some of those operating leases are just going up, cost of doing business for there. So outside of salaries, there was only an $800 increase over total operations.
Any questions?
Just a quick question. Are there a lot of empty positions there? It just seems like the 2023 actual is significantly lower than the budget.
So there may have been an open position last fiscal year. For this current fiscal year, they are full.
Okay.
But for the previous year, I think there was some turnover.
Okay.
So yes.
Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Our next department is Other Administration of Justice, and this is Department 53900. Proposed budget of $351,118.
Motion approved.
Okay.
The total increase is 100% salaries. As you can see, there's only two lines in this budget, and they are salary-only line items. The increase of $17,187. The assistance includes 4 judicial assistant positions in the state of Tennessee for those circuit court judges.
Does anybody have any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Our next department this evening is for Juvenile Services, Department 54240. Total proposed budget, $4,118,159.
Motion approved.
Second.
The total increase over last year's original budget is $263,158. There were just a few small increases. There was, on the first page, you can see dues and memberships. Those did increase by $600. On your second page, we did have an increase of $500. That was increase on some maintenance from vehicles. Your medical and dental services, this is a new item, $3,000 increase. This is just to provide medical care, just the increase of those costs in doing so. We actually had $6 decrease on other charges. Point that out. So We had, the only major thing other than salaries is we did have a substantial, as you can see on overtime on that first page. There was a 43% increase in overtime. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we have consecutively had to put additional dollars. And we come back to the commission and ask for a resolution moving those monies. So this year I'm requesting just go ahead and put those dollars up front to cover already excess that we're needing in overtime and to increase of the salaries.
I guess I'm gonna ask the first question. My favorite is, why has overtime increased so much?
May I, or you? Did you want to say?
It has a lot to do, Commissioner, with our detention center. There was a chapter where detention officers would accrue comp time, and it caused additional outstanding costs to the county that we were carrying over. So the auditors requested that we liquidate that comp time into a payment for the employees. And so we're now compensating employees for holidays, of course, overtime itself, but those kinds of things come out of that line item.
So is all of it in the detention? Does any of the regular
Yes.
juvenile services get overtime?
No.
Are
There's
they all
a
short?
little bit of overtime impact in our central intake department, now that we're operating that 24/7.
Are y'all short-staffed in juvenile detention, or y'all?
We have been, this has been a difficult staffing year this past year, but we anticipate within 2 weeks and with a recent hiring option for our staff that we'll be fully staffed. So within a month, we should be fully staffed.
Does anyone else have any questions for Sam? You're on it. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next department this evening is for fire prevention and control. This is Department 54310. Included in this, oh, sorry, you need the budget before I get the explanation.
Give a motion, please.
Total budget proposed of $678,366.
Move to approve.
Second. Okay, now we'll start my explanation. We do have 3 new line items you will see in this budget. The first line item, if you may, just quickly, I'll go through these. The very first line item is for our funding of our forestry division, for the funding to the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. Last calendar year, this calendar year 2024, the forestry issued about almost $2,700, more than $2,700 permits. So that is just a normal yearly cost. The second line is a new line. You can see that is a contribution to government agencies for cities. This is an agreement to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the city of Fairview, the city of Nolensville, and the city of Franklin to offset the cost for them to extend out into our unincorporated area for coverage. And Director Scott is here to address that if you need some additional information. And then the normal lines, the next 3 lines you will see, one for the Arrington Volunteer Fire Department. That is our normal donation. That is our yearly donation of $88,363. The Williamson County Rescue Squad, that is our normal yearly annual donation of $296,661. No change there. And finally, the following line is for Fire and Emergency Service Foundation. That is also our yearly donation of $161,342. If you have some additional questions on the new agreements, then I will turn that over to Director Scott.
Sure. So thank you, Madam Chair. So as the town of Nolensville has created its own fire department and the Nolensville Volunteer Fire Department dissolved, there are areas around the town which are unincorporated, which we would have to have the volunteer fire departments essentially drive past their new station to get to those areas. So they're able to provide better, quicker coverage to those calls. And the same thing applies in Fairview, where they're getting ready to build their Station 2. They would like to move into their property where we're using a garage of theirs to house the volunteer department out there. They would like to move into that property and use that as their Station 2 while they construct their new Station 2. So we're planning to move the volunteer rescue squad out to Fernvale, the new property we're working on purchasing out there. So the same thing applies in Fairview, where there are areas where they are just better positioned to get to those calls, where we would be driving past their station to get to them. So we have worked on this cooperative agreement with the town and the city, whereby we would reimburse them $250 per call that they respond to as essentially the first due engine. But all of our mutual aid still applies. If they're backing us up on other calls, it doesn't apply. If we're backing them up, this really only applies if essentially we're handing them the initial fire protection activity for that area. So we feel it's a beneficial deal for everyone. $250 is the FEMA standard reimbursement rate for 1 hour of a fire engine. We really, looking at $50,000 for Nolensville, we couldn't even hire one person for that amount. So it's a relatively good deal for us and for the citizens, and also for the town and the city, in that they are bringing in a little bit more revenue to offset their response. Obviously, their responsibility is, town of Nolensville, city of Fairview, and they do look to us to provide something in terms of them providing coverage for the unincorporated area.
I guess my thing here says structure, it's not every call they get, is it? Do y'all?
This would be, so for City of Franklin, we're working on a deal that would be just for structure fires. But with Nolensville and Fairview, we have agreements in place that will go through this process, and we'll sign interlocals with them. And that would be to provide the initial response for those areas where they can get there quicker than us. For City of Franklin, we are still working on, but hoping to get to an agreement where they will respond to structure fires in areas that are outside 5 miles of our stations, but within 5 miles of their stations. So if you think of areas like Highway 96 West, just past West Haven, it's very close to the West Haven Fire Station, but it's in the unincorporated area. They can get there much more quickly than, say, the Grassland Station or the Leapers Fork Station can. So we're asking them just to take initial responsibility, really the auto aid for structure fires in that area, and we would reimburse them for structure fire calls in that area. And that, of course, gets us a quicker response on structure fires, but also would help with insurance rates for people who live in those areas.
That's what I was
You
gonna
just
ask.
answered my question,
That-
yeah.
That helps the ISO rating then?
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
So it will save those residents money,
For sure.
may cost the rest of the county somebody to save them money.
Exactly.
I see somebody from Brentwood nodding their head.
What are we doing now?
In those areas. So for the area specifically I referenced right now, the county, the volunteer squads are first due to those areas. So residents in that area that are outside of 5 miles of one of our stations and not in Ottaway for Franklin, from an insurance perspective, they're essentially looked at as having no fire protection in that area. If we get a call in that area, we can get on the radio and immediately request Franklin to respond, and we do that pretty regularly. But this agreement would dispatch them automatically. So when the 911 call comes in, just as county units are being put on it, Franklin units would be put on it at the same time. And that action right there, getting that in writing, is what gets you the insurance rating credit.
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
I know it's less likely that this might happen, but what about the reverse? If we answer for them, are they paying us $250?
Not at this time. So with Franklin, part of what we're trying to work out is that they're pretty self-sufficient. They have full-time staffing. They have all the units that they need. The one thing that they don't have is tankers that can haul large amounts of water to the scene. So we're hoping to make that part of the deal where maybe the money doesn't interest so much as the tankers do. You'll actually be interested to know we're making the same deal with Brentwood, and they just asked for tanker coverage. They didn't ask to be reimbursed. We made the same offer to everyone who we were looking for this arrangement with, and they just wanted some support. There's some neighborhoods that have lower water pressure issues, and so we're going to be providing some county tanker support, and that was good enough for them to enter an auto aid agreement for some of the areas up by Arrington where their station is closer to properties.
It just always my understanding that there was kind of like a unwritten rule that you just help each other. I mean, I know we're that some of the fire departments are going into Nashville, they're not, I don't think they're paying 25 or 250 bucks or.
Yeah.
It's, I'm afraid, what I'm concerned about, not that I think that this isn't whether for or against county fire, but now we're starting to get into these paying costs for this extra expectations, and that's what it seems to be kind of inching towards a little bit, but they've always taken care of each other one way or the other. I think when Nolensville came online with their fire department, that was one of the things, oh, we'll help, we'll do this and we'll do that, but now they're asking for us to pay them. And I know the county does other things for them, so.
Yeah, and we all, our team, the volunteer chiefs, the municipal chiefs, all work very collaboratively and openly and all come to the table with good faith. What we have heard from the municipalities is that, yes, they absolutely want to help us, but they do have trouble justifying why are they continuing to go into the county area as well. Their municipal tax base pays for their services and they expect them to be available at all times for the towns and cities, which also makes sense. I do think that one nice thing about this arrangement is that this is a year-by-year deal, so it's not something that we're locking ourselves into long-term. We might evaluate after a year that this arrangement isn't working the way we thought it would, or maybe we build up our resources to the point where we don't need as much support. So the area that I referenced, really, kind of if I won the public safety lottery, we would want to buy land at the intersection of Old Hillsborough Road and New Highway 96. That area is just a complete dead area for fire coverage. So we may, that's definitely on our radar. We're looking at real estate all the time. So if we build a station out there, then we wouldn't be as reliant on Franklin. So this agreement will be a year-to-year revisit, kind of assessing where we are resource-wise and figuring out if this deal is working for us.
Would Franklin, and I'm sorry, this is my last question. Would Franklin, that area that you're talking about, are they, with this agreement, would be responding to that area now?
That would be part of the area, yes. And also urban growth boundaries are a big thing that we look at as we're planning where to put stations and these sorts of things, for sure. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask a few questions, I guess, about the Nolensville area, because I knew this was coming. I had been warned that, hey, we're gonna need some reimbursement here for the fire services. And I know there's some pockets of Nolensville that are unincorporated, kind of in the northeast section, which this totally makes sense, because it would take any of our volunteers a long time to get up there. But I also know on the south part too, I mean, we're also, again, kind of have that joint agreement. Do you have any sort of data on how many calls Nolensville would have received first under this agreement versus what we're actually handling now?
We do, and that's what this number is based off of, prior year call volume. So it's about 200 calls, but that is in the old District 16, which was the volunteer district. So the town is smaller than the district. So if you think of the district as the big piece of the pie, the smaller piece is the town. And we are creating, you may know, a new fire district, District 20, that'll be based out of Triune. And that is going to cut a little bit into the old 16, the old Nolensville territory. So the area, while it's based off of prior year call volume, that area has shrunk as we're starting to stand up that new district. We also sat down with Arrington, Brentwood, and did look at other areas that they may be able to cover, because we want to, our goal is to provide the best response, lowest response times, and then figure out a way that the deal makes sense for the community in terms of the finances. So we're trying to be frugal as well.
The second question I have is, how are we doing on recruiting volunteers kind of in that area? Is that an issue right now?
So right now, Arrington Volunteer Fire Department is doing incredibly well. They've been able to retain volunteers at a great rate, which is why we're able to give them the second station at Triune. They have enough people to cover those areas. We do have several volunteers in the Nolensville area, and that was and will really continue to be an option, is that we still own the old Station 16. And really our options are this agreement, stand up a new volunteer station at the old Station 16, or have Arrington cover those areas. Definitely our least preferred, because they'd be, in a lot of instances, driving past Nolensville wouldn't make a ton of sense. But we did go back and forth a lot about, do we stand up a new volunteer station at the old Station 16? And it does, again, this will be a year-to-year agreement, so we will revisit that. We didn't want to do that because we knew we were standing up the new triune station. We just didn't want to spread our volunteers too thin by standing up multiple stations. Really, the fewer areas that they have to cover, the more we can kind of concentrate their efforts and make sure we have a strong presence at fewer stations rather than spreading out their presence along a lot of stations. So that's the methodology and the thought, at least for now.
Okay, I appreciate that. The last question I had was, do we do any sort of interlocal, or any sort of, I guess it might be called interlocal, any sort of agreements with like other counties since we're right there in the border of Rutherford too?
Yes, we're actually, this year we've been working on Ottaway between us and Spring Hill. You know, they cover both Williamson and Murray counties, and with Murray County itself. And we're also looking at Marshall County. So yes, we do have mutual aid capabilities with all of them right now, and we run fires pretty regularly. Actually, it was the week after we went to Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill came in and covered 18 on a brush fire on Horton Highway in Williamson County. So that happens pretty regularly, and sometimes we will have those. If it needs to be a little bit more specific in terms of who's doing what for what areas, we will develop a specific Ottaway agreement like we're doing with Murray County. But for the most part, for everyday needs, the typical mutual aid law that covers all of Tennessee helps us get through those incidents. Well,
I've got one last question. I know this is estimated on calls. What if after 9 months you've used up all the money for the calls? What are you gonna do then? Are you gonna ask for more money?
you will see me again. Although we have built in, like I said, we built it on prior year call volume for Nolensville. That area that they're giving to them is shrinking. So we would expect, obviously there's growth and whatnot, but we'd expect to see potentially fewer calls. And then we essentially rounded up on the numbers so that we can transfer within this line a little bit. But if we do get to that point, then we would come back for a budget transfer. And that would also be an indicator of whether or not this agreement is working for us in the short and long terms for sure. So that's something we're going to be keeping a close eye on.
I guess my concern is maybe it might be just a minor call of, something not that, and then we've spent $250
You're
and
saying like a cat in a tree?
yeah, catnip, let's take a catnip
Yeah.
tree.
And, and we've talked about that too, and we do think it'll even out in that there also may be calls where they're assisting us for several hours on a big structure fire. So we're thinking that it'll all balance out, and looking at the prior year call volume, we think that we've come to a good place numbers wise, but it is something that, it's a new agreement that, is definitely of interest to all of us, and we'll be watching closely, figuring out if it's the right fit for the future.
We'll be watching it too, right? Has anybody else got any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Okay, the tree.
Our next budget this evening is for Office of Public Safety, Department 54900.
Medical examiner. Next.
It's a single.
And medical examiner.
I've got two.
Miss Helen.
I got two.
Thank you. Maybe that's,
You got mine.
okay, my apologies. Medical examiner, this is 54610. As you can see, this is for $400,500.
Move to approve. Second.
This is an increase. This is the coroners. You can see the first line is for the medical examiner. There was an increase over last year. The rate has increased from $7,950 per month to $8,189. This is a 3% increase. We have a yearly contract, and the max that they are allowed to go up on us per year is 3%. So that does represent a 3% increase. The second line is for a monthly rate increase up to $3,311. This current year, we are paying $3,215. Again, that is a 3% increase, and that is just the annual increase cost. The third line is per autopsy rate. Currently, we have budget, in the current fiscal year, we have budgeted for 105 cases. We are holding steady about that. We're a little less this fiscal year than actually the previous year. So we are going to maintain and just keep that as status quo. And that is per autopsy rate of $2,500 on the 105 cases. And that is a total of $262,500 for the year.
Are these done in Nashville?
Yes,
I saw Rutherford County is building their own.
they are, yes.
They must have a lot of autopsies.
Nick, just for your information and the records, next year we'll be contacting all of our cities that they began to pay for their own autopsies. That'll make them happy.
Is that the new law? Or is that?
It's mayor going after cities to pay. So it's only appropriate that when Brentwood and Franklin have their autopsies conducted inside the city limits, that they pay for those. And that number continues to grow, but between now and next year, we'll have agreements worked out.
Okay.
There's no way to speed that up? There's no way to speed that up?
Well, most of them have got their budgets, processes going, and to come in and tell them, because we already have a detailed list of how many of them. As you would imagine, most of your autopsies are conducted inside the city limits. And we, in the past, have put them on notice. Last year, I think we put them on notice, if I remember correctly, we would work through this. But that $400,000 number's getting to be, I get it when it's out in the county, you've got the little old lady or the little old man that you can't move the body until the medical examiner gets out there, but we're having to do a lot of autopsies. We even have paid for a couple of the state, there's no agreement, so we're working through that too.
Is this every city in the county, not just? the
All
big
6 cities will
Okay.
be presented with an agreement that they'll be paying their autopsies. Now, we're not sure from a legal standpoint what happens if they don't sign the agreement. At the end of the day, you county commissioners represent, there's only a couple of you that have only cities. But at the end of the day, you'll have some counties, you'll have some cities that will probably balk on it, but it's just a pass down for us. There's one other county, I believe they told me, is that right? One other county that's charging their cities.
Yes, they were sending that information so that we can be prepared for next year. And may I also add, the medical center also pays part of the contract for the medical examiner. So actually, it's the medical investigator. They pay half that contract. So we bill them quarterly, and we bill the medical center and Bone and Joint for their quarterly bills for our liability insurance and such. So that is also passed and a shared cost that they also reimburse. So that offsetting number shows up in our revenue from them.
If an individual, and I may need Michael to help me on this, or Phil, but if an individual is in a facility, maybe it expires while they're in a nursing home, that probably would not require a medical examiner.
It varies depending on their current status.
Michael, could you go up to the microphone to answer? We have mics here, but
Yes, sir. It varies depending on what their current status is. As an example, somebody that's been declared on hospice, that typically doesn't require a medical investigation or special circumstances like that. But if there's, the opposite is also true, even if they're in a nursing home, if there's something that's not pre-planned or even suspicious about it, then a medical examiner's autopsy is often required.
we had a situation, it was out in your neck several years ago that we had a lady that expired in her house, and this was several years ago really. We could not get the medical examiner out there for several hours, and we really got a lot of phone calls, and I want to say it was like 3 hours or maybe 4 hours. hours before we could get somebody out there. And that's kind of rough for the rest of the family to see the individual, so we appreciate what the hospital does. They kick in money to help us keep somebody on a retainer to get them out there. We haven't had that problem in years now.
Right.
There's nothing worse than a family member that you can't move and the trauma that's going on in the house and whatever. And just everything from suicide to
Just natural causes?
natural causes.
Yes, sir.
It's not the pretty part of government. There is no payback on it, but we're gonna push back on the cities a little bit because a lot of their deaths occur in their jurisdiction and they should be paying them. They'll not be pleased with it, but that's the way it works.
Does anybody have any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Of all things, it's been so much time.
If nobody objects, if we move the, public defender up, that's a short one, and it's behind the one short one.
Public defenders at the very end.
The last one.
No, I think we should make him sit there and wait. I don't have objection, do y'all?
Thank you, Commissioner.
So we will skip then forward to the Office of Public Defender. This is Department 53610. The total budget proposed for this fiscal year is $19,500.
Move to approve. Second.
This is a decrease, as you can see, this is a $25,000 decrease over operations. This department is 100% funded by the $12.50 fee they collect on their cases. So this is fully funded through those sources. They have reduced the operational request this year because they will be coming, actually tomorrow, they have a request for a new legal secretary. So we are just going to shift some of those operational dollars into a salary line item. So that is, again, currently they have collected over $55,000 and currently sitting on a little over $137,000 in reserve. So they have sufficient funds to cover this budget, as well as the new position request.
I was gonna say, this is my favorite budget. It was a decrease till you told me they were asking for somebody tomorrow.
It'll still be a little less.
Does anybody have any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. I think because the next two are gonna be so long, we're gonna try to do the ambulance. EMS.
Yes, ambulance was at the end.
There it is, ambulance service. Is that okay?
And other management. Can you do that one too, or does that go with your?
When did the ambulance, we wanted to do just the ambulance? Well, this,
Okay. The ambulance service, Department 55130, for a total budget request of $8,943,624.
Move to approve.
can I get a second?
Somebody's saying it. To get it on the floor.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, this is a $4 million increase in their budget. I'm sure that most of you will have questions for that one, so if I will or can, if I may turn this over to the executive team at Williamson Medical and just let them go ahead and go into their explanations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We presented the other day to the Law Enforcement Committee. We have been running the ambulance service on behalf of the county through an interlocal agreement for 52 years, I believe. When this was originally set up, it was set up so that the hospital really wouldn't be taking on any significant financial burden. It was just because of the county wanted us to manage the program, which I think that the team has managed extremely well. In the last, from 2016 until 2024, we went from 11 EMS units to 18 EMS units. During the last, I guess, it was 14 years, we were getting about $1.9 million of subsidy. And in fiscal year 2023, when we saw significant increase in the cost of running the service, we asked for $1 million more, so it went to 2.9. We then saw losses in excess of $7 million, even with that subsidy. And so we asked last year for an additional $2 million increase. And when I explained to the Law Enforcement Committee, subcommittee, this was sort of a Band-Aid, that we could not continue to absorb these large losses that we were absorbing for EMS. It was jeopardizing our ability to do the things we needed to do for the hospital. So that was approved last year, and we were hoping that the number would get down to a $7 million loss, and we told the committee at that time we needed to come back to get it even further down after that. Well, what we found is, even with that extra subsidy we took, we're going to end up with a loss over $8 million this year. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out ways to be able to fund the things I need to do. We know that our mission is to meet the healthcare needs of this community. And so I have almost suspended recruitment of physicians. I'm trying to find ways to pay for equipment that's desperately needed. And when we project next year, the loss would be around over $9 million. That's really not sort of what we signed up to do up front. We did sign up to do the EMS service, but not to take on these significant losses. So rather than coming to the committee this year and saying, I need $8.5 million or $9 million additional funding, what I did is I came back and said, if I can get $4 million of additional funding, I still will have a $5 million loss next year. That doesn't include any kind of market adjustment we may have to do for EMS. That doesn't include the fact that it looks like Spring Hill will need an additional EMS unit. But ultimately, after this year, we would have to figure out a long-term solution so that we can get this back down to a reasonable number, even if it's in the $1 million loss for us a year. I have to have the ability to manage my operations and fund my operations. And we have saved the taxpayers of this community over the last 11 years about $50 million that would have come out of their pockets. And so coming to the committee this year for a $4 million increase is still a $5 million loss to me next year.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do, Madam Chair. So I appreciate you doing the math, and I did read the letter. I guess, I looked and seen like kind of what other counties spend on ambulance service, and ours has been significantly much lower than what other counties are investing in ambulance service. I know this is a service that we have to provide to our residents. I guess my concern is like, I feel like we kind of kicked the can down the road on this particular issue. And while I know that we talked about the subsidization and the partnership here, I feel like knowing if we'd known about this way back when, I've only been on the commission for 2 years, that maybe we could have addressed it a little bit more over time instead of like $4 million now. So while I totally understand where you're coming from, and I realize that this is an expensive service that the county needs to offer to its residents, there's just a lot of decisions that have already been made that I think might have been made differently if we'd been able to been more proactive about covering this particular cost. So it is what it is right now. I understand, your need to cover the operations at your hospital and offer the service you do to the residents. Just unfortunate that we're getting hit with a lot this year.
Yeah, I did bring the issue to the commission. I mean, we project every year so the commission can see what's going on, and we've talked about it for a while. We've been able to sort of absorb it and just try to do our part the most we can. But the significant sort of ramp that's happened after bringing on these additional units, the cost of running the service from a 24 on, 48 off to a 24 on, 72 off, and just looking forward into the need in the future, it's an unsustainable model for us. And I love providing the service. We've got an incredible team. I can tell you stories every day about lives saved, but I've got to also be able to fund my operation.
I have a son who's going through certification right now, and so I have a whole nother appreciation for what EMS does. So I do appreciate all you guys do. Question for Phoebe, is this $4 million increase included in that $34 million?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
I got a question. So, I mean, obviously you can't keep funding it. If you weren't able to fund it, then the county, I assume, would have to hire a private agency. Is that correct?
If you hired a private agency, not only would they have to fund what we're funding, but they would look for a profit on top of that. So nobody's gonna walk in and just take this and say, we'll do it. They're gonna come in and ask you for more money than what it actually is costing for us to do this.
So it would cost what, this plus what y'all are putting in and
Plus,
additional?
mhm.
And my other question is, what percentage do we probably get reimbursed from insurance and things like that?
Well, there's two things. I would say this. One is about a third of our runs are uncompensated because ultimately if there's not a physical transport, if we're called to a scene and there's not a physical transport, most won't pay for that run. And then as far as the Mike, do you know what the percent, about 30% reimbursement? And there's no, I've been doing this for 44 years. There's no place I've ever been where the ambulance service can support itself. Most counties will pay for the entire service. It's rare to see it at hospitals because hospitals can't afford to do it. The one thing great about being associated with the hospital is you have to be associated with the hospital to be able to provide the blood products on the scene. So that's a favorable thing in our situation. But most of the time I've seen it across the country, many counties have a tax just for EMS services to the residents because it's such an important and needed service that does not make money.
Mayor, do you have a question?
Just to comment that this is not just unique to Williamson County. Phil's correct. In fact, there was a bill on the Hill this year that was trying to gain some momentum about funding. If you go to one county, they fund it this way. If you go to another county, they fund it this way. Or somebody else is operating either through the private side. And when you leave here, you'll think about this a little deeper. Your fire services inside Brentwood, inside Spring Hill, Franklin, I'm sure Fairview, oftentimes they have EMTs, medics that can attend to them, but they can't haul them. You need an ambulance. And so that's that question. So on the Hill this year, they're sending this whole bill for discussion to go to TASER. And I'm not sure I can remember what TASER stands for, but it's kind of a think tank where the legislation, they want to get more in depth, more information on it, and they send it to this and do a lot of research. And so they'll be reaching out to different counties. And hopefully when that bill goes to the legislators next year, they can find some money in the general fund that might help offset some of these practices. That's not a guarantee. There's a lot of bills up on the Hill looking for funding, but this is very universal at every county. The other comment that I would make is that several years ago, when HCA put the facility in down at Spring Hill, they paid for, and I don't remember how many years that was. Connor, I don't think you were around at that time. Todd may remember, but for a few years, HCA paid a flat amount for their Spring Hill ambulance run. Now, most of those ambulance runs went straight to Nashville because they were paying for them to go to one of their HCA facilities. Well, they soon lost money on that, and they got out of the business, which it fell back onto the county. So we're doing Spring Hill runs, but we're also doing Spring Hill runs in Murray County. So that was brought to our attention this year, and we'll have to get some data and some numbers and maybe go back to Murray County, which is a total different county than ours, and say, you know, we're making runs for you. Could you supplement that for us? And that's been fairly recent that that's all come about. There's a lot of activity that doesn't shy away from the 4 million at all and the losses that the hospital is saying, but we've got to find a better solution, either through a fee or tax, as Phil called it, or we've got to get some help from the legislature, because you can't keep this thing going the way it is.
I have a question, Madam Chair. 2 questions, actually. The first one is, I believe I recall, and Phoebe helped me with this, because Commissioner Webb's not here, but we were able to use some ARPA funds for some EMS cost offset, correct?
We purchased some ambulances,
Mhm.
some of the ARPA funds, yes.
And so we were able to get a grant like that. And then Phil, I don't know if this is something that you've worked on, but does our unique relationship with the hospital and the fact that you're a not-for-profit, so you're not HCA, are there grants available specific to hospital-run EMS or hospital-managed EMS that we might be able to tap into from that side versus on our side and with the legislation? Are we able to layer in some additional grants that we might be able to get creative with?
I have not seen any, and I'm not aware of any.
We've had Beth look into it.
She has, yeah. I just wasn't sure if she had.
And to continue the conversation, I think we bought 6 last year, 6 ambulances. Is that it? And we've got 4 this year that have been requested under the capital. 4 or 5? 6 this year too. So, but not all of those are new. Some of them are, I mean, they're all new units, but they're replaced. So you'll have a total of how many ambulances now?
We have 28 in our fleet at the moment. We staff 18 every day, and then that gives us 10 in reserve. Of course, they constantly working on them because they just break really fast.
We had to take one out of service today because it was involved in an accident.
Yeah, I heard that.
I had another question. The losses and the service itself. I know that you have talked to us before about that Williamson Health really subsidizes, you know, in a large portion, but also provides not just the emergency services, but also events.
Yes.
You know, the school system when they have events, when they have
Yes.
sports, and all of those things. So between you know, the EMS or the bone and joint at some of the, you know, events, that's something that is provided as well, and that's not included in operating costs here in
Well,
this budget.
the cost of the staffing is included in this amount.
Okay.
Not our doctors or
Right.
trainers or any of those kind of things.
But I learned something new today. I didn't know y'all helped with the medical examiner.
Yes, we do. I think we pay for half of it,
You
don't we?
pay,
Contract
pay
base.
for half
You
of
pay
the
half.
salary.
been doing that for years.
Just one last comment. I did kind of want to go and see like how we're doing compared to like other counties too. And so one of the things that stuck out to me is Montgomery County is about the same size as ours. They spent almost double on ambulance service. There's about $15 million that they spent in 2023. So we obviously have been getting a very good deal working with the hospital. So I thought that was interesting.
It's really amazing to me when I look back at it and realize just in 11 years, $50 million that the taxpayers did not have to pay. And when you look at the cost of money over that period of time, that's probably $75 to $100 million worth of value. But we were glad to do it, but it's gotten to a point I can't afford to do it anymore. And we're still trying to do some.
Does, okay.
And you may not have this number right off the top of your head, and I understand, but ballpark, what was the increase in your cost when you did that schedule change? And are they working less hours per year now
Each individual employee is working less hours per year. We had to do it because the market did it, and we were losing EMS staff. And so, when you go from 24.48 to 24.72, I think it was about a 30% increase.
Well, when you're on a 24/48 schedule,
No, it would be a 50% increase.
it's a great question. When you're on a 24/48 schedule, so you work 24 on and you're off for 48 hours, that schedule actually has 832 overtime hours built into every single employee's schedule in a year. So a 40-hour employee where they would work 2080 in a year, and another 832 hours to that. So by dropping them to the 24/72 schedule, we actually bring them in line with close to a 40-hour work week. It's actually still 42 hours a week is what they work on a 24/72 schedule. It just seems less because they're off for 3 days between, but it is what's happening across the market in the entire area. Does that make sense?
But our increase in salary expense over the last 10 years is up about $10 million per year.
Any more questions? I guess I need to say I'm on the hospital board, so I need to make that aware, but I will vote my conscience.
I got a question, I guess, from the mayor's office is, at some point, it looks like we might have to take them back into the county or something, some other type of situation.
Well, it's a great comment, but let me address Judy. Likewise, I'm on the board, so there'll be a conflict there too, but I'll vote my conscience. We looked at a few years ago, Commissioner, the conversation came up. What if the hospital did not run the ambulance inside the city limits? And let the EMT, let the people on the fire department deal with that. So it really gets to be very complicated, but the fact of the matter, Michael, do you come up here so I'm not, just stay up here with me. Follow me along with this. So, if I remember correctly, a few years ago, over 50% of our calls were coming from within Franklin.
That's true. A couple of years ago, we were right at about 50% of the volume was in the city limits of Franklin. That number's dropped now to probably around 43 or 44% just because of the growth in some of the other areas like Spring Hill.
So Spring Hill, Nolensville, all of those communities could run their fire equipment people out to be first responders. That sounds like a simple solution in that the ambulances, that's why we're spreading them around the county. Up until just a few years ago, when Todd was over at Franklin, we didn't have any ambulances except in Brentwood on whatever that road's called. Yeah. No, the one that goes from Sunset. That's the only one we had at that time where we had a fire station. And so if you will notice, we're putting ambulances now because we've got agreements at most of the fire stations. They've signed on to that. But for a long time, Franklin would not allow that. And so we started saying, well, as we build, as we grow, we'll put these ambulances out. Number one, it saves on the maintenance. They're not running all over the county and their jurisdictional services. But the thing you have to worry about, what happens if Franklin decides not to want to be or pay us for those runs, those 42% now, what would happen to your ambulance service? And so you have to have that discussion, that they could just do them and then use us as a call or backup. And so all of a sudden, you've got residents out there, accidents out there, that, it's a legal mess. And you could just look at the litigation, if you don't do it correctly, what would come down the pike. So ultimately, back in those days, we decided, well, we'll keep on going. Of course, the cost has gotten to the point now. But when when your reimbursement rate is what it is, and when you're making a lot of calls that you don't even get to build services for, it's tough.
And kind of in addition to what you're saying too, because we have to provide, we're statutorily required to provide ambulance services in the county. But this is one of those things that comes up when we see growth within the cities and they do plan of services. And I feel like this is one of those areas that isn't really projected well. So if we're gonna add homes and we're gonna add developments and we're gonna add density within the city limits, making sure that the cost associated with all the services that the county has to provide in addition is something that we need to put more visibility on. I just don't feel like we're not part of that conversation. It puts a bigger tax burden on our county folks. And it needs to be something I think that's addressed through state legislation.
Yeah, the legislation, and I'm hoping this task group really digs down deep into it and comes back with some solutions. Because whether you're a taxpayer in the city limits or you're a taxpayer in the county, the $1.88 applies to you, and that's the tax rate. The cities add on, we drop off some convenience fees, but if you were to pick, you've got 42% of your calls coming from Franklin, and probably this is not the place to ask it, but do you know what the other cities' percentages would be?
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I can get that information for
I
you.
think it would be good to start working on that, because Phil and I've had this conversation. It's gonna take some state legislation, because our job, we have to provide it. Now, we don't have to provide it with the hospital, and we don't wanna make Phil too mad that he just say, take his little toys and go home.
He may want to.
He may want to save money. We're kinda caught twixt in between, and we need the hospital as much as they need us, but at the end of the day, he's not obligated, we are. And so finding a solution is a problem.
Yes, sir, you're correct. And by TCA, it's interesting, the cities have a legal ability to ensure that they have adequate ambulance service, but they're not required to fund it
That's correct.
currently. So it leaves the burden to the county. And the complexity that you mentioned, it is very complex. The truth is, we're better off financially to operate a fully dynamic system that covers the entire area, as you spread the cost across everything. Whereas if we were dropping down to just resources to cover the county areas that are more rural, less people, and lower call volume, our actual cost per call will go up significantly to cover the same area, where we're helping balance that out by covering the volume in the city. And then having the networked system also makes us much more efficient and effective and better response times overall, because we move our resources around very dynamically. It works really well that way.
I guess I have a question. I know a lot of it's increased because there's one at all these different fire stations. Does that increase the cost or kind of even out having an ambulance
Yeah, but
out there
what
standing
you're
around?
doing by putting those out in our different fire stations is getting your time to the
Right.
patient.
It may save lives. I know
It
that.
save lives, but, we enlarge our stations to allow and accommodate these ambulances. And I think we still have a few fire stations that we've not been able to penetrate. Does Fairview allow our ambulances in over there, Connor?
They do, yeah.
Is there one area that doesn't?
Flat Creek doesn't have one.
Nolensville currently does not in their new station, but their future plan for their future station 2 does include space.
So Connor's out, I mean, at the end of the day, Nolensville, when they built the new station, should have included ambulance. Now, it would have cost us $600,000 for an ambulance, or is that what they cost, Connor? Pretty close. But at the time, they were restricted how much money they could spend on their building. And so in the past, we've even helped build that extra bay so we can have the ambulance. You all know that we've done that. So it's a hodgepodge with a lot of the cities. They're trying to keep their city taxes low, just like we are. It's a mess.
To make sure and answer your question, Commissioner, we make our decisions on where we place the ambulances, whether it's in a fire station or not, on the combination of the geography, the population density, the call volume that we're seeing build in a certain area, and response times. Just kind of that whole mix of attributes that we look at. So, we have an ambulance in Leapers Fork, which is a very low call volume area, but we have it out there because it takes so long to get there, right? We've had it there for years. That works really well. We'd make the same decision in the city or cities, but as the volume builds, then we have to add more resources in order to keep the response times down to a reasonable level. Does that make sense? So we factor all of those issues to decide where we're going to place the ambulances. It's interesting, as the volume builds in certain areas, Phil mentioned earlier, it will be time soon for us to add another ambulance in Spring Hill. Because we operate dynamically, as the volume continues to build down there, and it will, then as we move ambulances throughout the day, we're pushing resources from a busy area like up in Franklin down there to help cover the volume as it swells throughout the day, which overall drives up response times. It's just a natural effect of increasing volume no matter where it is in the county. That's just one specific example. So we monitor all those different metrics throughout the year and kind of forecast where the growth is going to happen and where we're going to need to add the next resource to kind of keep things evened out.
Michael, while you're there, if you don't mind, just one final comment. I think a lot of people think that you're picked up by Williamson Health Ambulance, you're gonna go to Williamson Health Medical Center. That's not true.
No, that's not true. The patient has the right by law to choose where they would like to go. Now, roughly 60% or so of the patients that we pick up choose to go to Williamson Health, but otherwise they can choose to go to their facility of choice as long as it's in a county that touches our county.
And interesting, and I appreciate you saying that as my final comment, said that again, that Davidson County doesn't transport down to Williamson.
We ran into that with my daughter. I drove her myself.
That's correct.
We were going to Williamson Health or bust.
If they have a patient sitting on the side of the road just a mile inside of Davidson County, they'll call, and they want to come to Williamson, they'll call us to come pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, I know you didn't mean it to sound this way, but this discussion is going on all the time. It's now finally reached the level of the state. We need some help.
Yeah.
And it's not fair for someone in Franklin or someone who lives in the unincorporated area not to have medical attention, period. Now, Phil's saying he'll do it, and it's gonna cost him $5 million.
Yeah.
But for us, it's gonna cost us 4 more.
Great. And even at the national level, this conversation is escalating on an annual basis. At the federal level, from a Medicare reimbursement standpoint, they kind of set a standard across the country on what they will pay for an ambulance, regardless of what we bill for it. And that's just the number that it's going to be. The challenge with that is that what they reimburse for an ambulance doesn't cover the cost. That's normal across the country, unfortunately. And then a lot of the private providers, Blue Cross, et cetera, they work hard at benchmarking against what Medicare will do. Now, typically they pay more But it's a very, very challenging subject. EMS nationally is not a profitable business unless you kind of get into more of the non-emergency side of things where they can really schedule and plan and use cheaper resources.
I guess to kind of to build upon that, so I think you said earlier, only about 30%, like we lose money on about 30% of the calls.
We get paid about 30% of our charges, but 30% of our calls are not patients that get transported. We get to run out there. And so most of those we will not get any reimbursement.
Okay, because there's really no patient involved.
Or they just refuse to go to the hospital. It varies. Sometimes there's not a patient to be found. Maybe a car accident gets called in and everybody goes, you get there and nobody's hurt. Or maybe they have minor injuries and they just refuse to go to the hospital.
So that 30% reimbursement is because the providers they're not covering the full cost. So you get what you get with Medicare, you get what you get if it's Blue Cross. So that's another area that needs to be looked at is.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe, as I said here, somebody will come up with the idea like we did the educational impact fee. That every house that is being built, all those apartments and condos within the city limits, put a dollar value on that per square foot. Now, that will not be popular, but somewhere down the road, you're either gonna pay it here in the property tax, or you're gonna pay it on the future growth that comes into the town. And you said it, Commissioner, all these cities building, the county's pretty stable. But when you're building 200 and 500 foot condos and apartments and et cetera, that's not gonna be popular. Particularly in your area where you're growing. I believe I heard that come out of your mouth. I'm just regurgitating it in a different way. But I'm all for putting fees on people to help pay for growth, because growth doesn't pay for itself. And go on and put it on there the same way we do our schools. But Michael can't do that and Phil can't do that. But 24 commissioners could.
Well, please do let me say thank you for the hard questions. I sincerely, I mean that. It's a privilege for us to serve in this way, and we're grateful for all the support we get. It really means something
Thank
to the
you.
community.
Are we ready to vote now?
I promise I'm done with this. I just want to say how much I do appreciate the service that y'all do. I work for the Sheriff's Department, and then I work for Brentwood Police Department. And one of the big reasons that I was happy about moving to Brentwood was because back in the day, there wasn't that many volunteer fire departments, and there wasn't that many ambulances in the early 90s. I watched several people die right in front of me, and there's nothing I could do about it. And there was nothing better than to see that ambulance pull up, or the fire truck pull up either. And I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you guys do. So I wish we maybe planned a little bit better on some areas and all that, but it's not discounting the work that's done, because it's really, really important. Thank you.
Now are we ready to vote?
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Thank y'all. Thank you.
Hold my question because it was about the opioid. But I felt like we can talk about it offline.
Find your next.
All right.
You ready?
On to fun.
Next budget this evening to hear is Office of Public Safety. This is Department 54900 for a total budget, proposed budget of $10,563,127.
Second.
So I will go a little slower with this one since this one is a little lengthy. Just a quick overview of the 400. This is an increase of $469,109. There are several lines that you will see in here that are increase, and then you'll see another one that's a decrease. So a lot of this has been able to, we've been able to absorb the increased cost overall. So the total amount net that we have not been able to absorb within the operation budget is an increase of $44,434. So to me, that's pretty incredible, over a $10 million budget total. So if we start, the first page will reflect our personnel cost. This is an increase of $424,675. Again, this is addressing the salary increases.
Y'all do a motion in a second over here.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We did, oh, yeah. Did we? Yeah.
On page 3, there was a total increase in communications of $2,344. On page 4, the first line I would like to point out is the contract with government agencies. This is an increase of $14,957. However, this is 100% reimbursed by the ECD. I do want to make that point. They have improved, this is for training. So these are training costs and these are the increased costs, and it is 100% covered by ECD. Again, as you progress down the page, you can see evaluation and testing is slightly over 4,000. Again, referring to my comment previously that this is a very plus and minus all the way down, trying to absorb those costs. Operating lease payments, there was an increase of $11,414. That was just an increase for Nolensville and Fernville for those overage charges. Page 5, we've had a decrease in our operating lease payments, a total of $50,840. We have moved those funds to within the budget to absorb other lines. Your next line progresses page 5 and 6 and 7. You can see the detail in 8. Those are a total increase of $15,560. You'll see on that first section under page 5, the Everbridge. You will see reference to that. We are also increased, that is an offsetting revenue from the cities. So we were able to recover some of those funds as well. There is a slight increase for just some maintenance services for some vehicles and equipment. So additional there, you'll see in those lines, $77,000 has been added to the vehicles just for that maintenance. Page 9, a decrease in travel. These are local mileage. That's where we account for the local mileage rates. That is a decrease of $4,000. And then a slight increase of $200 in the contracted services. Our electricity progresses on page 9 and 10 for a total increase of $6,200. Again, those are our monthly electric bills for those facilities. Gasoline, we are reducing that line by $15,000 to move that cost to different lines to absorb our operating increases. Page 11, there is a decrease to natural gas of $18,000 and uniforms a decrease of $8,900. On page 12, we have moved some additional funds into our water sewer line in the amount of $9,000. And the remaining lines, other than our other equipment, has remained unchanged. So a total increase to the budget of $469,109. Of that, $424,675 is salaries and overtime.
And 44,434 operations.
It's just regular operations, yes.
I've got one question. Where's the barking dog tower at?
The Barking Dog Tower is off Waddell Hollow Road. It's on the west side, one of our radio communications towers. There is a little dirt road called Barking Dog Road.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it is, right?
Lived there all my life. Have y'all got any questions?
Are you guys looking at any of this, the AI technology for helping with like dispatch and stuff like that?
We actually just recently bought a training and quality assurance platform called Comms Coach for dispatch, which is an AI platform that can help training our personnel on calls. You can actually run calls with a simulated caller. But the great thing about it is that it uses AI to scan all of our 911 calls for service to look for areas of improvement and things that we did well. Right now, we quality assure all of our CPR calls and high intensity calls, things of that nature. But this will allow us to use the tool for 100% of our calls. And it doesn't completely replace a person, but can get a lot of work done and can kind of raise flags for people to look at. So
Which one is that?
Comms Coach,
It's not in here this year.
Yeah, this year.
We purchased it through the ECD, and we've got 2 years on that we purchased it.
You need to come up to the microphone or repeat it for me.
yeah, so as Christy, 911 director said, we were able to fund that through the Emergency Communications District, which donated 2 years worth of the service for us. And then we'll look to integrate it into our operational budget moving forward. So we're definitely looking at different AI solutions and are dipping our toes into that world. Some centers, like Metro Nashville, is looking at AI call taking for non-emergency calls. So not 911 calls, but sort of the administrative lines. And that's another area that we're definitely interested in. So we are looking to be on sort of the leading edge as much as we can without being on the bleeding edge, but definitely, all aspects of what we do, looking at how AI can perform or enhance services.
It's making some hyper speed jumps quick, but
It's crazy impressive, yes.
Quick question, the grant, I guess we did with Vanderbilt, right, technology, how's that going?
It's going very well. It's, Todd, you want to come address the bus program? Yeah, I'll bring Todd up to speak to that if that's all right.
Thank you for the question. Vanderbilt has been working, their team has been working with both the Franklin Special School District and Williamson County School District to identify the issues that they're facing, possible solutions, and then other things like state law, what does state law allow and does not allow within buses. For instance, drivers cannot physically be looking at a screen while they're driving, so they've introduced some voice technology into the iPad system that will actually talk to the bus driver and give them whatever the directions are, whether that's to change routes or whether that's another bus needs to be dispatched to the particular location. They've developed a prototype that they've shared with all of the group, and it's demonstrated all of the different choke points that arrive in the system and how they plan to navigate around those choke points. And we expect that next month, in the next meeting, we'll actually get to see real-time some evidence of our bus routes. Not every bus is equipped with the technology right now, but we will be able to hopefully see some of our buses and how they're being affected by the recommendations. And they developed an app by which the parents or students of buses can see real-time the status of their buses or whether or not a new bus is being dispatched to their situation. And we've also been working with our 911 groups to be able to bring certain data from our 911 system, like vehicle crashes and other things that close roads, into the system to also to be able to evaluate real-time bus routing and how they might navigate around certain accidents that may be occurring within our city and county. So it's going real well. They're still on target to complete the project within 1 year after the grant was approved.
Wow, love to see a demo.
Yes, ma'am.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Our last, other emergency management.
Our last budget for the evening is our other emergency management. It is Department 54490 for a total of $25,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
And as you can see, this is a 0% change.
Does anybody have any questions? Are we ready to vote then? All those in favor of a 0% change, say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Madam Chairman, you have a meeting tomorrow at 4:30, go through the capital costs. And you'll see where we stand on the capital cost of the month.
Anybody got anything else before we adjourn?
Second. You wanna bang your guy?
Oh, yeah. Meeting adjourned.